While there's early examples of its use, the term crash out was popularized by the musical artist NBA Youngboy in 2017, and it usually refers to someone or something completely falling apart. When it pertains to entertainment, or in the case of this video, a TV show, we're talking about a series that either started out strong, became cultural phenomenons, and then completely fell apart, alienating fans and critics alike. If you're older, you're probably more familiar with the term jumping the shark, which refers to a character named Fonzie on the show Happy Days, literally jumping over a shark on jet skis, which is widely considered a stunt that signaled the eventual downfall of the show's quality and ratings. Now for this list, I'm going to be focusing on more widely watched and commercial shows that garnered huge audiences at the start of their run and eventually pissed everyone off as it became more and more clear they had absolutely no idea what they were doing. I'm also going to be talking about shows I've watched because it doesn't really make sense to talk in detail about a series I've never seen, so if you're wondering why famous examples like How I Met Your Mother or The Big Bang Theory aren't in here, that's why. Hey, it's my channel, so I get to be a godlike authority on all things. So without further ado, here's the definitive and indisputable list of the biggest TV train wrecks of all time. Number 7. Prison Break. So back in 2003, HBO had really begun to change the landscape of television forever with what were becoming known as prestige television shows. Essentially TV shows with the same production quality or value as feature films and serialized to promote addicted fan bases. While Twin Peaks is credited as one of the key originators of the genre, it was The Sopranos that really put the concept on the map. Shortly afterwards, HBO was producing and releasing other major prestige TV shows like Deadwood and The Wire. Although somewhat restricted by broadcast regulations, major TV networks like ABC and Fox were scrambling in the background to create their own, and two of the first major offerings from Fox were 24 and Prison Break. Released in 2003, the first season of Prison Break was a massive success. The gimmick was exactly what the title suggested. Two brothers played by Dominic Purcell and Wentworth Miller have to escape prison together. Lincoln, the older of the two, is framed for a murder he didn't commit and is on death row, so his younger brother goes to prison with a plan to have them both escape. While it might sound a bit like Shawshank Redemption the TV show, it actually proved to be original and clever, having the main character tattoo his entire plan on his body, and each episode felt like he was always a couple steps ahead of both the prison guards and the audience themselves. With a cast of great characters, captivating performances, and a thrilling concept, the first season of the show was a well-deserved cultural phenomenon, garnering 10.5 million viewers in its premiere that maintained throughout the season. And then they broke out of prison. See, for a show called Prison Break that was centered around a prison break, the question becomes, what happens next? The entire reason for watching is to see the brothers break free, and if it was a movie then, you'd most likely see them ride off into the sunset and assume they'd live a quiet life somewhere in South or Central America. But the show was a massive success, and it sold itself as being thrilling and clever, so Season 2 started the long and slow descent into complete pointlessness. The brothers are now on the run, and there's huge-scale government conspiracies afoot. And while it could have steered the ship and ended in a decently satisfying way, they went for a third. And I kid you not, a fourth season of the show called Prison Break. Despite ratings and reviews cratering, with the finale of the series receiving just 3.32 million viewers, 3 times less than its first season, it was clear the juice had been completely squeezed by the title's concept. And then they made a movie. Prison Break. The Final Break was a direct-to-DVD sequel to Season 4 that attempted to wrap up the elements of the conspiracy of the show and received pretty average 7 out of 10 style reviews, but was nonetheless a successful home movie release, making nearly $6 million in home sales, which, yeah, isn't actually that much. This time it featured an all-women's prison, and the protagonist of Sarah, who's arrested for the murder of Christina, and Michael recruits prison-breaking expert Lincoln Burrows for one final mission: to help break Sarah out of prison. It's mostly forgettable, and you'd have to be a pretty hardcore fan of the show to want to dig up an old copy somewhere, but its moderate success convinced Fox that there was still some life left in this corpse, and they renewed the show for yet another season. Yes, there's a 5th season of Prison Break that takes place 7 years later and features yet another prison break, this time in Yemen, and it absolutely tanked. It got the lowest ratings and viewership of any season of the show and barely maintained enough viewers into the finale for Fox to finally accept the world had had enough of prison breaking. Number 6. Westworld. Back in 2016, HBO was on top of the world thanks to the global phenomenon of Game of Thrones that had become the biggest TV show ever. They knew the good times wouldn't last forever, and there was an inevitable final season coming to the series, so they wanted to create the next big thing. So they turned to a park, but not just any park. Jurassic Park. You hear me out. The author of the Jurassic Park book series, Michael Crichton, had also written and directed a relatively successful science fiction film in 1973 called Westworld, about a futuristic amusement park with themed worlds where tourists could go and experience IRL living through different periods in history. It was enough of a sleeper hit in the 70s that a sequel, Future World, and eventually a TV show in the 80s called Beyond Westworld were all made, so there was enough built-in nostalgia to warrant a reboot, and HBO went all out.
Welcome to Westworld. No orientation. No guidebook. All our hosts are here for you.
In this world, you can be whoever you want.
They spent over $88 million on a super high-end budget series produced by J.J. Abrams and an all-star cast featuring Sir Anthony Hopkins, Ed Harris, Thandiwe Newton, Evan Rachel Wood, James Marsden, Jeffrey Wright, and eventually even Aaron Paul joined the show. It was a stunning spectacle. From the incredible set designs and location to the next-level special effects, they seamlessly blended science fiction, horror, mystery into an incredible exploration of high-level philosophy about the very meaning of existence, consciousness, and what it is to be human. The first season is really solid, with great pacing, juggling an all-star cast in equal measure to revealing the secrets of the J.J. Abrams' infamous mystery box in a satisfying manner. Some might argue too well, because the first season stands on its own as a perfectly wrapped-up storyline that answers most of the questions it asks, and the show could have ended there on a high note. But this was supposed to be the next Game of Thrones, and it never got more than 1.8 million average viewers, perhaps being a little too frightening or cerebral for the casual audience, and all the problems with the series would start in Season 2, 4 weeks on end. You see, this wasn't the Netflix-style entire series dump at once. It was released intentionally right after new Game of Thrones episodes to try and cross over fan bases of both series. So if you were wondering what happened to Maeve, like in the video game The Last of Us 2, where you'll be playing as two different mortal enemies chapter after chapter, cutting away at key moments but getting so invested in the other storyline that you quickly forget about one before you're thrown back into it at a perfect time. But the other storylines of Westworld were not that great, or oftentimes even that interesting. Filler episodes became a fixture, the mystery box became more annoying than satisfying, and the ultimate war between the androids and the humans became an afterthought you completely stopped caring about. The exception to this being the 8th episode of the second season, titled Kitsuya, Lakota for Remember, which is regarded as not only the best episode of the series, but one of the greatest TV episodes ever. It's a very risky bottle episode that centers around the side character, Akachita of the Ghost Nation, a fictional Native American tribe. Zan McLaren, the actor who portrays him, was consulted on the scripting and the concept of the episode, being part Lakota and Standing Rock Sioux himself, and his performance in this closed episode is amongst the best in the series. I won't even spoil the journey of personal development and sentience that is explored here, because it's really worth watching just on its own. But I mention it because it's honestly when the entire series peaked. HBO kept pouring money into the show, despite the ratings continuing to sink rather than expand. With the third season bringing in Breaking Bad's Aaron Paul to become a central figure of the show in an attempt to appeal to an even wider audience, but the third season is such a mess that even his much welcomed appearance couldn't save it. The show went from 1.8 million average viewers to just 0.8, which would normally spell the end of a show. And yet, number 5, Dexter. Ugh, Dexter. The show that your friend who doesn't like to read subtitles probably told you is his idea of high art. A series infamous for having a spectacular downfall after becoming a household name, and for good reason. The original series came out in 2006 and became the most viewed show in Showtime's history. If you're unfamiliar, it tells the story of an ethical serial killer known as Dexter, someone who was trained from an early age to use his insatiable desire of killing for good by targeting other serial killers. Based on the novel series Darkly Dreaming Dexter, the concept is enough of a cheap selling point in and of itself. What if a serial killer killed serial killers? The ultimate anti-hero that you come to love and root for while always keeping him at arm's length, because at the end of the day, he does love to strangle people to death and cut up their body parts. Arthur Mitchell became iconic as Dexter, helping sell the very concept for the show, matched by Eric King as Sergeant James Dokes, who acts as his quasi-nemesis, always a few steps behind him and almost catching Dexter for the serial killer he truly is. The first is a fantastic standalone season, both in its pacing arc and addictiveness, paying off in a twist ending that's both satisfying and surprising. The next couple of seasons under showrunner Clyde Phillips are also great, which is why Good Dexter is considered seasons 1 to 4. The show peaked with John Lithgow as the Trinity Killer storyline, as did the ratings, giving Showtime nearly 3 million viewers, the highest for any show they'd had up until this point. When Clyde decided not to renew his contract due to exhaustion and wanting to pursue other projects, it really shows you how important a showrunner can be, because immediately the series plunged off a cliff. Chip Johannesson all but nuked the audience's trust in the show with ridiculous and implausible storylines, and a year later Scott Buck took over to try and steer the dying horse in a better direction, but couldn't, eventually leading to what is considered one of the worst endings in TV history. Despite all this, it was still overall considered Showtime's biggest franchise. So they went the Star Wars route and decided to create an entire cinematic TV universe out of it. There was the prequel series, Dexter, Original Sin, complete shit. Dexter, New Blood, shit manifest. And finally, Dexter, Resurrection, overhyped shit. It's a classic tragedy of executives wanting to milk a series for all it's worth and refusing to just accept that if you had a great 4-season run, why not leave it that? And speaking of which, number 4, The Walking Dead. I hate this show so much. I don't think I've ever genuinely wanted so much of my life back from a creative team. Look, I know people joke about that when they see a bad movie, but this was so much worse. For a worldwide cultural phenomenon like AMC's The Walking Dead, it's pretty universal at this point how many people initially adored the series, only to drop off like zombies shot to the face one by one with each subsequent misstep that the creative team took. An absolute disaster behind the scenes and playing out in seasonal arcs that still annoy me to have to talk about. We've all got zombie fatigue at this point, the genre being the most overused trope in scary movies, video games, and TV shows, to the point where I'm surprised it doesn't have its own streaming service, Brain Dead TV or something. The hardest thing to make in television is the pilot, because you have to bring in audiences to a new concept and make them invested in a bunch of characters they don't know, all within the span of usually 30 minutes to an hour. There's famously horrible ones, but The Walking Dead is the exact opposite. The pilot for this show, directed by horror movie legend Frank Darabont, immediately pulls you into the world and leaves you hungry for more, and the rest of season 1 is pretty solid, with a lovable cast of characters you come to root for against the undead hordes. There's enough lore and mystery building leading to an exciting climax, and it's all around a solid season of TV. Season 2 is the most boring waste of time. This was the show that everyone would meet with their friends every week to watch together. It's terribly written and acted, barely has any zombies or encounters, and made me think the show was a one-season trick pony. And boy was I proven wrong, because the 3rd season is a powerhouse of action and emotion, and once again made The Walking Dead the show to watch. AMC was on the top of the world, until they fell into the worst example of the edging paradox in TV history. You see, The Walking Dead predated Game of Thrones, the show, not the books, for its "you never know who's gonna get killed next" stakes. It had no problem killing off beloved characters left and right, which heightened the tension to unbearable heights sometimes every episode if there'd be a zombie encounter. For the first couple of seasons, you never knew at any given moment who would live and who would be food. So you fast forward to the 5th season, and there's a staple of main characters who've been around for a while, and they're all fan favorites. The showrunners had introduced a trick by introducing tons of new characters every season that they could kill a handful of them off without affecting the main cast like Rick, Morgan, or Glenn. But then comes in season 6, and in episode 3, the worst possible thing happens. Fan favorite, Glenn Reed, is trapped with Nicholas being swarmed by walkers. Feeling all hope is lost, and with no other option, Nicholas kills himself, but even more tragic still, pulls Glenn down into the horde with him. There's no escape. The undead must feed, and they tear into him. And then wait 1 full month to know what happens. I kid you not. Fans had to wait a full month to have confirmation of Glenn's death, only to find out it was the most chicken shit fake out, with a new angle revealing the zombies were eating Nicholas's body that was on top of him, and he squeezes through into a magical Deus Ex hole. This is widely regarded as the moment fans stopped trusting the show to be good, but it was quickly forgiven as Glenn was alive, and the true horror of not having him in our lives anymore softened the tackiness of the entire ordeal. This was until a few episodes later, when the ultimate villain of the show, Negan, is introduced and quickly established he's going to kill someone off. This sequence is considered to be the most iconic of the entire series, and for good reason. Jeffrey Dean Morgan absolutely steals the show, and the moment he steps onto the screen, the stakes have never been higher, and this ruthless living ghoul is going to steal a beloved soul before our very eyes. And the person he kills is not revealed until the next season.
Give me your shit, or I will kill you.
Yes, they did a cliffhanger on a main character murder, and that character turned out to be Glenn. After the pathetic fake-out, the month of waiting, the cliffhanger, and another year of waiting, desperate fans finally found out that they decided to kill Glenn after all. The online meltdowns and freakouts were of historic proportions. By this point, people were watching shows online and streaming parties and reacting in real time, and they couldn't believe their eyes. What followed were the worst seasons of the show, with ratings plummeting in freefall and even hardcore fans bailing on the series. I tapped out after a couple episodes into season 6, and for this video started revisiting the whole thing, and it was even worse than the internet led me to believe. Scott M. Gimple gave up on making a groundbreaking zombie drama and decided to murder the series instead. He would leave the program as it was on life support after season 8, leaving Angela King to pick up the final seasons, and shockingly, to her credit, she did the impossible and turned the show around enough to warrant accolades. But it was too late. Getting as invested as we all did globally turned out to be a massive forfeiture of our lives, and one that most fans wish they'd gotten back. Meanwhile, AMC continued to milk their cash cow for everything it's worth, turning the comic book turned TV series turned video game into a complete Marvel universe. There's so many spin-offs I'll never watch, and to those still hoping for the good times, may God rest your soul.
1 years ago. Now I'm looking for him.
The world must have fled.
I have to keep trying. I won't stop. I'm getting there. I'm getting home.
Number 3. Lost. I don't think there'll ever be another cultural phenomenon like Lost. A show that went from being something you'd heard about to the only thing you'd think about, to the biggest disappointment of your life in only the span of a few years. ABC's foray into prestige television with the most expensive pilot for its time in TV history and a monstrous cast of characters that would become international sensations. There's no other way to explain it other than to say, for a time, Lost was all anyone could talk about. A simple premise of a plane crashing on a mysterious island where every episode highlights a different cast member, jumping between past and present to not only give more background to their personalities, but help explain mysteries on the endlessly puzzling island. You may have started watching to find out what's inside the hatch, but before you knew it, you would be pissing tears of joy and bewilderment as you learned the heartbreaking story of Jin or Locke. Every week, discourse would flow online over what this smoke monster is, what exactly is the island, when the hell is Kate gonna pick between Jack or Sawyer?
Why do you keep smiling at?
You need a haircut.
Oh, really?
This was really the defining moment of J.J. Abrams' mystery box, as the show would intrigue fans globally over the numerous puzzles the island presented. Who were the others? What did the code mean? When the hell is Charlie going to die?
Why do you find it so hard to believe?
Why do you find it so easy?
It's never been easy!
The problem with riddles is that they need a satisfying solution. You can't hold up the most mysterious show since Twin Peaks like a holy tablet and not have answers for something the entire planet became so invested in. And for 2 straight seasons, they not only delivered the most tear-jerking drama on television, but the most addictive one as well. People had to know what everything meant. And unfortunately, for the planet, J.J. Abrams had no fucking idea. I distinctly remember at the start of Season 3 thinking how fascinatingly impressive it was that a series like this was crafted with such precision as to establish an entire mythology years in advance with the mathematical calculations to have it play out year after year perfectly. When in reality it turned out the mystery box was completely filled with shit.
How'd you get your job? How did it all begin?
Oh, I auditioned for it, and I got it.
I think there's more to the story than that.
Not only did the writers and showrunners not have anything planned out, they clearly were making it up as they went along. The numbers? Gibberish. The others? More survivors. The island? I don't know, what do you want? The problem just got worse as time went on. Soon any answer provided to a long-standing question would be replaced with the other one. They became a meme. The smoke monster is actually the man in black, which is actually an immortal soul transferring entity, which is actually John Locke, which is actually, you know what, look over there, someone is trying to take away the soul of the island.
Oh, bloody real! Don't push the damn button! I know what I saw! It's a lie, it's not real! None of it is real!
It became so convoluted, not to mention insulting, to fans who dedicated years of their lives to analyzing the show. There were better explanations for the lore of the island being invented on the internet, yet Damon Lindelof wanted to keep as many of the questions unanswered, claiming they would stay the biggest mysteries of the island. Because let's be honest, they had no fucking clue what they were doing with any of this. The show thought it could air in perpetuity if it just kept presenting new riddles upon one another until the mystery box was so bloated and hideous, no one wanted to look what was inside it. At least the unanswered mysteries of Twin Peaks are part of the appeal, as the dreamlike nature of a lot of the series is best explained with the line, Lost presented itself as a supernatural thriller that was constantly grounding itself in reality before expanding back into the mysterious, only to have it ultimately explained. Until it went off the rails, or in this case a time-traveling wheel, proved as uninteresting as the writers were creative. Number 2. Game of Thrones. What can you say about this show that hasn't been said already? A rare instance where an adaptation surpassed its source material mid-run and had to conclude a story before the readers of the books could ever hope to get their hands on the Winds of Winter. I'm one of those Game of Thrones fans who was so blown away by the first season of the show that I instantly rushed out to buy every single one of the novels and devoured them all while waiting for the second season to premiere. Impressed that the first season was as faithful as it could be to the source material, I then began noticing the deviations from the novels in the second. Like a lot of hybrid watchers / readers of The Song of Ice and Fire, I was fine with the changes they constantly made to the source material, as the novels were just too vast and extensive and spent more time describing the scent of semen on clothing than a TV show was ever going to be able to 100% faithfully adapt. Then came Season 6, where the cracks in the dragon glass started to show, but still being as enchanted by the series as ever, I was willing to believe that after such a historic run in creating not only one of the greatest fantasy television series ever, but one of the greatest TV shows of all time, that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss would be able to stick the landing, even if they had no books to guide them in the darkness of the night. George R.R. Martin surely gave them the key points from the novels, and there's no way they'd squander their life's work on something this important. But they were up against some pretty insurmountable odds. For starters, the show had gone from a relatively unknown HBO property to the biggest global phenomenon in entertainment since Star Wars. International obsession with the series was overwhelming, and thousands of parents were naming their children Daenerys, and the pressure was being felt by everyone involved. Several actors who appeared in the series no longer work in the industry due to the level of obsessiveness that parasocial fans had formed with the series and their characters. Season 7 was without question the weakest in the series, but nowhere near bad enough to make anyone lose interest. And so, the final season of the biggest TV show in HBO's history prepared for its final season.
We will defeat it. We're the last Lannisters. The last ones who count.
But the showrunners had already had enough by this point. The studio executives offered them way more episodes than 6, hoping for at least 10. and it's rare that creatives have money thrown at them only to reject it. But they were completely burnt out. Both David and DB had been trying to develop other shows and movies and no longer wanted to have their lives consumed by Westeros. Combined with the lack of source material and a nearly impossible to satisfy rabid fanbase, the final season was as disappointing as it was short. Nearly a decade had passed since it debuted, and the final arc of the series centering on Daenerys, a character who had survived the near complete extinction of her family, human trafficking, rape and abuse, and eventually rising to become the liberator of the lower classes, the breaker of chains, had instead morphed and ended her run as yet another Hitler? Cliched, time-wasting, and leading to zombie Jon Snow to save the day. The series went from being one of the most subversive in the history of the genre to just being another tale of the rise of an evil woman who must be defeated. So many wasted plot lines, characters, world building, gone in an instant. While there will always be moments in the series that are amongst the most captivating sequences in TV history, from the Red Wedding to the music and wildfire crescendo of Cersei's revenge, the devastation of such a wasted series makes even typing out the summary painful, as now I'm just realizing the sting of the disaster is still an unhealed wound. Honorable mention, Stranger Things. So I've got an entirely separate video on everything wrong with the entire series arc to Stranger Things and how ultimately it became a victim of its own success. However, that was before the show had completely finished and only the first part of the 3-part finale release schedule had aired. And now that the show is over, I kinda wish I'd put it in the 3rd position, but honestly it warrants its own separate video because it's such a pathetic and inexcusable example of rainbow washing, and a double negative one at that. The public pushback to the final season of the show was largely because 2 of the main cast members are openly supportive of Israel while they're committing an act of genocide. To then take one of those characters and make this pathetic coming out scene this attempted powerful moment, which is such an insulting version of when straight people write about queer oppression. Coming out isn't a universally positive experience, let alone one that can or should be used as a deus ex machina way of bringing the gang together. It's extremely dangerous, often psychologically exhaustive, and can have very dangerous consequences. Narratively, the show remains a cyclical, bloated mess, trying to justify itself in the face of ever-increasing budgets and fame, ultimately repeating a lot of the same beats from prior seasons and concepts until the nostalgia porn mess became a reference to itself. Number 1. The Simpsons. Wait, I hear you say, this isn't fair. It doesn't count? The Simpsons is still airing on television, so it can't be in a list of TV shows that fell off or are done. Well, for starters, with AI technology and a clear, unexplainable fetish for keeping the series airing in perpetuity, I think it's time to accept that The Simpsons may never end. Long after everyone watching this video right now may have passed away, there could be robots tasked with writing and animating and producing the Simpsons family, having 22-minute adventures until the end of humanity itself. Plus, considering how Dexter and Game of Thrones have reboots and spin-offs constantly being proposed or produced, I think it's safe to say it still counts.
One family will show everyone what they're made of.
This is the worst day of my life.
So worst day of your life so far.
But more so than anything, because the 3rd to 8th season of The Simpsons are, in my humble opinion, the greatest scripted comedy in television history. In that time period, every single episode in every single season is a classic with minute after minute incredible jokes balanced perfectly with emotional arcs that make you fall in love with The Simpsons as much as you laugh at them. Originally a spin-off of the Tracy Ullman Show, The Simpsons went from a random animated sketch filler by Matt Groening into one of the most recognizable brands since Disney.
We monorail conductors are a crazy breed, half in love with death, gobbling up danger like ordinary men eat peanuts.
And 37 seasons and 797 episodes ago, the series debuted on Fox. This won't be a deep dive into what happened to The Simpsons, there's plenty of documentaries on its fall, but it's pretty well understood by millennial superfans that at a certain point in Season 9, the troubles began. Maybe it really was the principal in the Popper episode, which had one of the most beloved characters, Seymour Skinner, get retconned into a completely different character named Armin Tanzarian.
My dream is to go back and become principal of the elementary school.
Some people might call that a pretty corny dream.
Invalidating his central relationship with his mother that was a defining point of his character, simply for a throwaway plotline and a series of forgettable jokes. Maybe it was how slowly, season after season, they started relying heavily on guest appearances and random jobs Homer could take up to fill the writing gap. But whatever you place is the point. The bigger problem was that they became a victim of their own success. it was no longer a cartoon. It was a brand. There's so many products and industries that you could probably fill an entire city with just Simpsons branded products and live off the many food tie-ins. Though not for long, because they're incredibly unhealthy. And because the show has been airing for over 3 decades, the timeline of each of its characters and their past is constantly changing. The jokes have evolved with trends. The show is constantly having to reinvent itself until it's become like that video of the AI constantly being given a prompt to replicate an image of The Rock, virtually unrecognizable from anything that originally made it special. I know they've tried to completely change the series, turning it into more of a Simpsons template, as if the show itself is like an art form. Instead of painting or singing, the art itself and the medium is The Simpsons, which is kind of neat, very interesting. I'm all for it, but it's gotten to the point where now the actors who play the characters have become so old that their vocal cords aren't even able to make the characters sound like themselves anymore.
Homer, we just got invited to a wedding in the Poconos.
It's just really sad to hear and watch. And I have to hold out hope that at a certain point, they'll just let the original run of the series simply die. Please consider joining the Patreon over at patreon.com/theserfs. It features bonus episodes, uncensored content, and stuff that we can't put anywhere else. And every dollar goes towards helping fund the production of more stuff. It's not just going towards feeding Chico, although part of it is going towards doing that. And thank you for every dollar you've spent helping him get some food.
特别鸣谢以下执行制片人 Political Puppy Multi Monday Riley and Anna Omni Kid 185 Tigwit Stellar Dean Dot Cady Hackbird Celine Everything Important Ward Springwood Sebastian Demo Roller Dragon Bobby Lasers Enter Cat Soul Car